This is the Drive-By with Freeway Frank.
Svetlana Chernienko is at my house.
Yeah.
Svetlana, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
I know you're looking at me like you're completely shocked. Like, well, of course, idiot. I'm at your house. Where else am I? But that's my opening line with every guest I ever have, because I'm always shocked that they made the trek. In your case, for viewers that are outside the Montreal area, you came a long way. You drove, you're about 50 kilometers or so.
Yeah.
To be here.
It's all good.
So it means a lot from the bottom of my heart that you're here. Now, I've been watching your socials for quite a bit of time. I think you're inspirational, multidimensional. There's meaning behind everything you do. So the video that finally prompted me, you're going to be like, really, Frank? This is the video that did it for you? Was the one that you had with a couple of friends. You were all drinking on a Friday night. And it was some kind of, what was it exactly? Like
we're doing a TikTok?
You were doing a TikTok, and it was like, did I read incorrectly? 4 MILFs you wrote or something like that?
Our MILF shake. That is the MILF shake. I was even singing it at my best friend's house. I was like, because she's obsessed. My girl Jessica is obsessed with doing TikToks. And she's like, let's do a TikTok. And I'm like, wow, we have all the MILFs here. I was like, look, my MILF shake's bringing all the girls to the yard, because she's lesbian. So I was like, I'm going to do the girls for you and the boys for the rest of us.
Amazing. When I saw that, besides the fact that you're, mental health advocate, human rights activist, able to write something so freely, like, doing the MILF shake with your friends, that's what I like about you. You're very down to earth. You're cool. And I said, I have to have this woman, this real woman, this true woman here in my studio to talk. So thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you're a mental health advocate, human rights activist, and you're a survivor of domestic abuse. I don't want to get right into we're going to talk about all this stuff because we have endless amount of time. But I wanted to start about the mental health advocacy and human rights. How did you what inspired you to get into that? I know you were also a fashion model. You've done a lot of different things. New York Fashion Week is big. You were telling me about that when you walked into my home. So tell us a bit of your background, how you got to doing what you do today.
Well, I started off as a model. I was modeling for years, and I just got to a point in my career that I felt that I'm not doing anything but being a mannequin, literally, being somebody's coat hanger, and I'm no longer happy doing it. I feel like I don't have a voice. I feel like my opinion doesn't really matter. I'm just supposed to be quiet, pretty, and walk down the runway or take a couple pictures. And I got fed up. So at the ripe age of 34, I said, I'm retiring from modeling, and I want to find something else that has meaning. And I thought about it. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I was going through my own private battles with my mental health. I was going through private battles with my father battling Parkinson's and dementia. And I was dealing with another failed and really bad relationship, and I didn't know where I wanted to go. It was literally in 2016 when I sat down and I was like, I want to share my story with everyone. I want to be that change that I want to see, and I want to open up because it's been difficult. And literally when my father passed away a month before I gave birth to my youngest son, who's 7 years old now, I said, I want to make that change now. And I ended a relationship, and I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be open. And then on top of everything, I did it on national television. I was actually raising money for a women's shelter. And I was like, okay, let me reach out to Laura, and see if she'll have me on to help me raise money. And I did this whole thing to raise money for them. And then I outed myself about my story because she asked me a question. She's like, well, why is this important to you, domestic violence? I said, because I'm a survivor. And that's when I was like, okay, it's too late now. There's no coming back. So that was my catalyst of saying, I need to do this because I have the strength to be able to talk about this after everything that I've gone through.
So as somebody who was at I hate saying the line, at the hands of a domestic abuser, conjugal violence, it was a tough time. See, that's what people don't understand. When you're going through it, a lot of people will say, well, why don't you just leave? It's not that simple to just pick up and leave.
Nope.
And especially now what we learned during the last 2 years of the pandemic is things didn't get better in that domain. They've gone a lot worse because people are with their abuser for longer hours, if not all day, with Zoom meetings, everybody working from home, and those that abuse has gotten a lot worse. How did you? First of all, how many years? If we could dive into it a tiny bit. This was an ex-boyfriend?
Yeah, it's my first son's father, my 24-year-old son. It was
Okay.
his biological father. And I started dating him when I was 15. And it went on. I left when I was 22.
And you were with him for
All those years.
wow.
Yep.
What finally got you? What did it for you finally? Where you said, "Did somebody help you? Did you? Were you? You must have been completely scared because to stay in something like that for so long, it's not because you don't want to get out. It's because sometimes you can't.
Mm-hmm.
How did you finally get out of it?
When he abducted me and my child.
He abducted.
Yeah, he abducted me and lured me to come to New York. And yeah, that's what took it. When I felt that might have been my last day living and breathing, when I had to go through 3 weeks of being essentially held in a bedroom attic in Brooklyn, that is what did it for me. That's when it was like, enough is enough. I'm done. And I had to fight to get out of there. It was too much. I mean, I knew for years that I had to leave, but I didn't have the strength and the courage to leave. I had people judging me. Mm-hmm. Well, you're so smart. Why wouldn't you just leave? Being smart has nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. Many intelligent women get abused and they stay because you're scared.
Absolutely.
You know, I've woken up so many times in the middle of the night having a coat hanger being twisted around my neck, a wire coat hanger, waking up being choked. You know, so there is a lot of fear because it didn't start that way. My relationship didn't start, well, he just started smacking me around. It started with him manipulating me mentally and making me believe that I wasn't good enough for anybody better than him. And that's how it always starts. And I was young, you know, so I went through this mental manipulation until the physical started. And when the physical started, boy, was it a surprise, but I still stayed because, you know, it's hard to even envision. You feel shame. How am I with somebody who's going to treat me this way? How am I with someone who's going to put their hands on me? It becomes such a manipulation that you think, well, he loves me. That's why he's hitting me. He loves me. That's why he's doing this. Oh, I made him a little jealous. It literally turns into a thing where the gaslighting and the manipulation becomes your new reality. And you think that this is normal.
Yeah, exactly. It starts to, they normalize it.
Yeah.
And you start to believe this is something that, a lot of women go through. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And I was young and my mother tried to get involved and I was like, Ma, but I love him, stay out of it. And it's hard for family members. It's hard for friends to get involved because we're so deeply embedded and ingrained and invested in it that we think this is all we deserve.
Somebody who's going through, domestic abuse right now, what's your message to them in terms of breaking out of it? And like you did, sometimes it takes people a decade. Some people have been in domestic abuse relationships for 20 years, like you said. Hard to get out of it. What do you say to them in terms of getting out now, not waiting any longer? I know there's signs now that people, if you can't speak because you've been threatened, whatever the case is, there's a sign you make and people will come to your rescue.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's the person who's being abused that has to make that final decision, like you did, where you walk out. What do you say to somebody right now who's going through that?
Leave. It's never going to change. It's never going to get better.
Immediately.
Just
pack your
leave.
bags.
Pack your bags
go.
and leave. And especially if you have children, leave. It's never going to change. It's just going to get worse. I'm lucky that I survived, and I'm one of those people that is here to talk about it. And I'm very raw and honest about it. It's not going to change. If you see it's getting worse, it's because it's going to continue to get worse, and you will die. That's the reality. That could have been my reality. You never want to believe you're going to go through it. I didn't want to believe I was going to go through it and stay in it for so long. And I was in and out of it. And, and my family was trying to get me out. It was just like this. I was like in this zone, like a robot, going through the motions and the manipulation. And I had that little whisper in my ear, like, Lana, this isn't right. And I'm like, no, just shut that down. When you see the red flag, it's waving, just go.
And that's what you hear a lot from the person being abused, is that you almost become... It's almost as, you can't explain it, but it's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle, and you can't get out of it. And you really need to almost stop the wheel and say, this is it. This is the day. Now, at the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa, my wife and I and my mother-in-law were there. We'll talk about that coming up a little later on because you were there as well. We saw a lot of signs. One specific one that caught my attention was you locked me up with my abuser during the last 2 years of the pandemic. People who were maybe getting abused before got even worse. people who were never getting abused, and then this pandemic gave the abuser, the manipulator, the opportunity to do it, because now, well, my victim is in the house with me 24/7. It really scared me, and it really opened up, my eyes. It opened up all of us, all three of us that were there, and I must have seen a half a dozen signs. That's a half a dozen too many. Even if it was one sign. And I turned to my wife and said, how many people are going through this right now? And then we see a mother, and the mother is like, wasn't Mr. Trudeau, was some other profanity.
Yeah.
You killed my son. So there's a lot of things that this pandemic has made worse. There's no doubt about it.
100%.
Right? And to me, I just couldn't believe the amount of, there's domestic abuse out there. You hear about it all the time, but it is quiet. It is taboo to talk about. A lot of people don't just come out and talk about it. What do you think we could do as, the influencers that are out there? By the way, I'm not an influencer, but social media personalities, people in general, because people in general are social media personalities.
Yep.
We all have our own TV channel. What can people do as individuals who are not stars and not public figures to almost put out a message together that this needs to end? What can they do, from somebody who spends a lot of time on social media, both of us, but somebody who does this and advocates for this?
I tell people to come out and speak about it. And if you have a friend who has a story, even if you have your own story and you feel comfortable to talk about it, do so. But if you really want to create change, you have to make abusers uncomfortable by shedding light on the topic. That's the reason why last year when I decided to go out and lead a protest, because I had enough with all the women that were being abused and the women that were getting murdered due to domestic violence. And there was one particular family that really touched me. They reached out to me and said, we want you to be the spokesperson for us, for our daughter. Her family mimicked my life. I looked at her son, I looked at her mother and my mother almost looked the same. I was like, okay, this has to stop. So that's why I took to the streets, because people are afraid to talk about domestic violence. And I said, you know what? I'm going to shed light. I'm going to have everybody marching with me, and I'm going to let abusers know that I'm going to make them really uncomfortable. So I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to scream about it. I'm going to share my story, share my vulnerability. And that's what we need to do. We need to talk about that big, ugly monster in the closet. We need to, because there's a lot of people that are going through it, especially during the pandemic. I know friends that have reached out to me and told me they were going through it. And I said, leave, just go, pack your bags.
Do you think women are scared to do that because of the fact that they don't know whether the abuser will come after them again for doing that? And you're saying do that, but not by outing who the person is,
exactly.
But by just saying in generic terms that I'm a victim of domestic abuse. Here's my story.
Yeah, unless you're protected, then don't.
Yeah.
For me, I just chose not to. I'm not going to feed that monster. I'm not going to give him notoriety on my platform. I refuse. I kept him away from my son. My older son never wanted anything to do with him. When I told him when he was 13 what I had gone through, I wanted to be honest with him. I just didn't want to give that to him. He knows what he put me through. He knows what he did. That's why essentially he left me alone, because he knew enough is enough. He tried to come back into my life, and that's what women are afraid of, the abuser coming back.
Of course.
But he tried many times after I actually left. He had the nerve. This is the thing, that it can happen, but we need to talk about it.
And I'm so glad you're talking about it. You're probably wondering, wow, he went right to that at the beginning. But no,
good.
that's the, look, for me, you're about many things, but that's something to me that within the first couple of minutes, I wanted to get right, to it. When I speak to my producer, who's not here today, he often says, get to that eventually in the conversation. And I'm like, well, when we have people's attention off the top, to me, the most important thing to talk about is this. So I'm glad we did. And we could talk about it anytime you want, because the more people talk about it, as you said, the more we get out, we break the taboo of talking about this, the more people will feel comfortable to do the same thing. Now, you were very vocal about Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Okay. And at the same time, you were in Ottawa for the Freedom Convoy, which you just don't see on social media. You just don't. People who were part of BLM are not people who are in Ottawa for the Freedom Convoy. for the most part. Now, I'm sure there are some people, I'm sure some of your friends, people you know, but for the most part, why do you think people have shied away from supporting the truckers that did support a couple of summers ago, George Floyd, the whole BLM movement? Because there were a lot of things about the BLM movement. You know, BLM in its essence, Black Lives Matter, absolutely. But then people infiltrate those organizations too and send the wrong message. There's always going to be a few bad apples everywhere. You know, the core of BLM is not, you would think, is not burning down buildings in Minnesota. So it's the same thing here with the Freedom Convoy. Why do you think people have remained mostly quiet about it? And then the fact that you didn't and came out, how did people react to you doing that?
Well, for me, essentially, when I was going, I spoke to my team. I'm like, listen, I'm for human rights, so I need to see for myself what's going on. And everybody's like, okay, we'll go. And as we went, I was getting messages from people. I was just traveling with my husband. I was putting videos, and I was getting called every single name in the book. And I was like, okay, I'm a racist now? How could I be a racist? And I said, first of all, as a human rights advocate, you want me to be there because I'm there to fight for human rights. So let's just for a second, besides BLM or besides the trucker convoy, I'm there for each individual.
First and foremost.
For pro-choice.
Yeah, that's it.
I want people to be able to have the choice in making decisions on what goes into their body. Now, I'm going to be clear. I told you, I'm double vaxxed. And I'm not an anti-vax, vax. No, I'm about, you have the right to make a choice, what you want to do. You have a right to make those decisions. Nobody should force you to do something you don't want to do. And somebody thought I was a little brutal for saying it. I'm like, being forced to do something, think about many people in their life that were forced against their will to do something. Okay? That's what I'm not for. Funny, I got there, I'm looking around. I was very quiet on my live because I wanted to see, and I saw so many positive messages of signs of revolution of love and being there for love. I didn't see the flag, the Confederate flags. I didn't see the swastikas. I know that there are people that always come. There always are bad apples that come. We did see it during BLM where they were trying to say that Black individuals were burning down buildings. There's a lot of angry people that came out for different reasons.
Correct.
For me, when I was there, I wanted to see the people. I saw some nurses that were there. I saw politicians that were there. And I'm always a neutral party. When I go to these things, unless I'm invited to come and protest, then I'm going to go and I'm going to march. That's why I was very quiet about what I wanted to be the observer to see what are people here for. Are truckers essential to us? They're very essential. They bring in medical supplies. They bring in food. They bring in many things. But one thing that I did see is I saw Canadians coming together for something that's right. I don't agree with the hate symbols. That shouldn't be anywhere. I've dealt with that in my life, living down south, being chased by Confederate flags and KKK members. I don't agree with. But I do agree for people standing up for what's right and for freedom of choice. And I'm always going to be there for freedom of choice. My mother lived in the former Soviet Union. Okay, communist country, no choice, no nothing. Africa, there's a lot of, I lived in Nigeria. Okay, there's a lot of things where you can't just make your own choice. We're in a country, Canada, the fundamentals were built on the Canadian Charter of Human Rights is pro-choice.
Correct.
And that's what I stand for.
So your mom's Russian?
Yep.
That's a great combination. Nigerian and Russian. I love that. My wife is half Jamaican. A lot of people don't know this. My wife's half Jamaican, my father-in-law, and my mother-in-law is Danish. It's amazing. And you get to learn so much about both cultures. Even with me, I sometimes say I have parents of two different ethnicities because even though they're Italian, my dad is from the south of Italy, and he grew up in the northern part of Italy, meaning that's where he met my mom. And not to say that Southerners, anything wrong with Southerners, but he grew up with a certain mentality, and then he went to the north and spent 18 years in northern Italy. So it's nice to have diversity with your parents as well and learning more about both cultures. So, okay, so Russian, Nigerian, you're in Ottawa, you supported BLM, you're there for the trucker convoy. Why is it wrong then for somebody like yourself, and this group, this very loud group, always points out, no, you see, you can't mention that because you don't know what Black people went through. No, you can't mention that because you weren't a Jewish person during the Holocaust. That's why I try to avoid making those associations. But as somebody that is, biracial, does it not bother you when you hear people say that you can't, what you just said, guaranteed bothered people, right? Because you mentioned certain things about, you're going to compare that to communism in Russia, and you're going to compare that. How do you answer when people that say that to you? Because to me, that's offensive that people say that you can't say that. In other words, that you would even be canceled for having that thought, to me, is mind-boggling.
Well, I'm half Russian, so I can say it. I grew up speaking Russian. Zdravstvuyte to all my Russian people, by the way.
Well, what did you just say?
I said hello. Привет, здравствуйте.
By the way, she's not drinking vodka. There's a stereotype. Yeah, and I'm not drinking grappa. We are both drinking scotch. And it's good scotch, right?
Yeah, na zdrowie.
Oh, na zdrowie.
Yeah.
Nice. Continue, please. Sorry. I try not to interrupt, but you're so fun to speak to.
Oh, thank you.
And that's what we're doing. We're having a conversation. This isn't an interview or anything.
No, but that's the thing is that, with Black lives, people say, well, you can't compare the two. Yeah, you can't, because Black people have been trying to fight for freedoms for hundreds of years. Okay, this is a different freedom, but we're still talking about protesting in large numbers. When we look at the convoy and everything that happened, it's getting convoluted now. It's getting watered down and convoluted by a lot of hate. And I tell people, stand up for whatever you believe in. If you believe in the convoy, stand up to the convoy. Stand up for that. Mm-hmm. If you believe in individual freedom of rights, then stand up for that. Everybody had a different reason. I was there because of people, my children, my children's children. I'm there for I don't like the fact that we're being mandated and forced to take a vaccine. And people were surprised because the haters that started when they didn't know the reason why I was going, when I came back and made that live, they were like, oh, so you're a real freedom fighter. You were there for the fundamental of human rights. I said, but that's what advocacy and activism is. I have to be neutral for the people. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see for myself what was going on, what's happening. And then when I started seeing this, next day my publicist called, did you see all the symbols you have to post? I said, I'm going to post about it because I don't agree with symbols of hate or speech. That's negative. I don't. But I do agree for people coming together as a whole and saying, you know what? It's been enough. We followed the rules. We did everything. Okay. We were told, get vaccinated, do this, and we're going to go back to normal. Now we've done it all. Okay. For me, I looked at it. I went to get vaccinated. I'm following the rules. I'm wearing my mask. I'm washing my hands. I'm doing all this madness. And you're worried about a small, maybe 10% of people that aren't vaccinated. We have herd immunity.
Yes.
So why the hell did I get vaccinated for? If you're going to worry about them over that, it's their choice. If you're saying, well, it's dangerous not to be vaccinated, okay? It's their choice. If they want to harm them, it's their choice. If I want to protect myself, that's my choice. Mm-hmm. That's the problem that I have. And that's the reason why I went to Ottawa, to see what the convoy was about, to see what was going on. And now there's so much violence that's being spewed and hate. And I don't like where it's turning. Those rotten apples are coming out to ruin whatever the beginning start of this was. It's so watered down. It's terrible. And that's what I'm not here for. I don't like that form of hatred. But I tell people, do stand up for your rights, because you have the right. We're in a country where we have
Charter of Rights.
Come on, it's there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not lying. Go Google it. It's there.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, in Ottawa, everybody was holding the Charter of Rights. Well, not everybody, but there were a lot of copies going around of the Charter of Rights, the Canadian Constitution and everything. So when you see, then, you just said there are a lot of, there are bad apples.
Yeah.
I believe, it's in my opinion, humble opinion, I am HO, that one of those bad apples is the Prime Minister of Canada. And the reason why is when you see our leader come on and lead off him discussing what's going on in Ottawa and labeling people what he labeled people off the top. I'm not even going to say it anymore because it angers me. That's very dangerous that the leader of our country in a free democracy who was elected by the people and is hanging on to, barely a minority government, 2 back-to-back terms, comes out, anytime anybody comes out and says what he says. Did it shock you to hear Justin Trudeau come out and say those words?
Yeah, I was triggered. I told friends of mine, I said, when I saw the speech, I'm a very neutral person and I'm very open, but I was very triggered that you're focusing. Yes, he had to bring up things that he saw. Great. But his focus and his speech, I was so angry because he said that, oh, well, you know, we have a group of truckers that they're doing their jobs, and we have, you know, supplies, we have things in our grocery. We don't have it. I literally took pictures. I even sent it to you.
Yeah.
I said, this is my local grocery store. What is he talking about? If you're going to speak on something, be honest, but don't water things down. And I understand there's political things and he's nervous to be honest, but you have to be honest with the people, especially if you're going to make a speech like that. That to me, my personal opinion, feels like he was poking people and then trying to instigate something.
Trying to divide us.
And that's the problem that I have. Division. We have been so divided. And I don't like division because growing up, I've gone through so much division being biracial.
Yeah.
And I want to see people come together. And I don't like when I see political people. I don't care what you stand for.
Yeah.
I don't care what side you're on. Left, right, up, down, conservative, liberal. I don't care. Because for years, for more than I can remember, I was liberal. And then this started happening and I'm like, who am I going to vote for, dude? Like, what's going on? Because it becomes difficult. These are people that are making decisions. I always tell people he's the president and CEO of Canada. You know, our premiers are the VPs, and he has to make very difficult decisions. And I know he's not going to be like, just like we know on social media, sometimes we're not going to be like for what we say. But I think the way he approached talking about people, it could have been handled better, with better diplomacy, better grace, considering he's the leader of our country. And that's just my personal opinion.
No, I agree with you 100%. I'm glad that, you know, even if you disagreed with me and said, Frank, I love Justin Trudeau, I'm okay with that. You know, that's the thing. I'm sure people reach out to you via your DMs too and say, you have it in for this guy. No, I don't have it in for him personally. It might sound personal because, you know, we're in a relationship with Justin Trudeau. He's our prime minister. Yeah. So anytime you have a relationship with somebody, it's personal. It's just like when you lose your job. First thing they tell you, Svetlana, is always, Frank, Svetlana, nothing personal. No. It's very personal. You fired me. You didn't fire anybody else. You fired me. That makes it personal.
Yeah.
So it's Black History Month.
Yes.
And you put out this great post, several great posts. One of them was, again, my memory is not very good, and it's not the Scotch either. Almost like what not to do, okay? So it felt just short of saying, hey, white people, don't do this.
But I've made posts like that before,
yes,
saying dear white people.
And you had, which, yeah, exactly, dear white people. Which, when I read, I was like, oh my God. Because I had posted, I made a post right at the beginning of Black History Month. It wasn't my post. I shared your post.
Yeah, you did.
Because I said, this I can't mess up because it's Svetlana's. It looks so nice, and I'm just going to repost it. When you put out a post like that, what are you trying? What's your message? Because obviously, the more people that talk about Black history, it's great. But there's a what not to do on your list of what not to do. What shouldn't people do when they're doing stuff like that?
Well, if you're going to be an ally, be an ally. And
a real ally.
A real ally. Don't be like, oh, I'm an ally because I have 10 black friends, 3 Puerto Rican friends. That's tokenism.
And B.I.G. and Kobe Bryant behind me.
This is the best. My 2 favorite people ever growing up. These are my amazing. 2 favorite people.
Amazing.
I'm telling you.
Right.
Biggie for life.
Yes.
And Kobe. Amazing. I'm telling you. But these are the things not to do. Like, my mother's white, and she goes hard for our community. She steps up and she speaks. You have to stand up if you see something happening. Don't just stand up, just because.
It's cool.
Yeah, and it's cool. Don't do it behind closed doors too. Like, if you hear somebody using the N-word, it's very derogatory in our community.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's in a lot of hip hop music. I know people don't come for me because you're going to say so much hip hop music. Yes, it's true. It's become that almost like street slang when you're speaking, but it is derogatory when a non-black person's. I don't even like when a black person uses the N-word towards me. I don't like it. We're educated. We're better than that. But don't do that. Don't do tokenism. I don't do well with tokenism. If you're going to stand strong. Don't tell me how many black friends you have, because it doesn't tell me that you're not a racist or you're for the community because you can count. If you can count and tell me how many black friends you have, then we have a problem. It's not good. That means we're standing out a little too much. When it comes to businesses, okay, listen, it's enough. Black History Month comes, you're putting, dashikis and all the African colors. Listen, the flag of Nigeria is not red, black, and it's white and green. So if you're gonna start talking about Africa, you have to put all the proper flags of the black community in every country.
So it's almost like Justin Trudeau in a way, because wherever he goes, right, he has to dress up like the people who live in the country he goes to, or he just has to go overboard, and it's not genuine.
Yeah, it's basically not. Don't be disingenuous, okay? And then companies, please stop taking, and I talk about token Blackism because it happened within our community for years, which means we have different shades of black. We are melanated in different colors, you know. I have friends of mine that have 2 very light-skinned parents and came out dark, and vice versa. So don't take, you know, if you're going to take a very dark-skinned person to do a campaign, take a few different shades of black so it's representation for our community. Taking one dark-skinned person is not the collective of who we are. We have so many beautiful shades of blackness from the lightest to the darkest, and you should be able to show that. Taking somebody that's like, oh, well, nobody's going to mistake her for being a black girl, that's a problem. Because you're looking at it, like my mother says, through a white lens with white eyes.
Is it almost a disservice then, and I'm just throwing it out there, that there's, you know, a mental health, as somebody who's a mental health activist and a human rights activist, I'm going to ask you these 2 questions. Almost a disservice then to have one day of the year we talk about mental health, 1 month. This is what bothers me personally. I'm just being honest. 1 month. Here's Black History Month, albeit very important, and I'm all for it. But Black History should be Black History Year, should be every single day where we stand up for people we love and care about. Mental health is the same thing. We should have a conversation all the freaking time, not just the day that the calendar tells you. It's the whole Valentine's, right? Can you imagine your husband, right, only remembers to tell you he loves you on February 14th? I hope not. That's not the case.
He knows it'll be trouble in my house. It'll be so much trouble. He knows better.
So do you think, you know, it almost, I mean, as important as it is, do you almost believe that calling it a month does this, right? It invites everyone to have that monthly, you know, showing everybody that they're, you know, they're compassionate, and yes, I believe in this, you know, like for example, last year when the National Day for Indigenous, well, is everybody talking? I haven't seen anybody post about First Nations since then. You know what I'm saying? So is it cool because Svetlana, I like it when Svetlana and people like you are talking about it every day. Not when you're told it's time for the black square, it's time for, you know, all Black Lives Matter, whatever the you know, whatever the thing we're celebrating is or commemorating. I find it's worse when you only have one day to do it. Do you agree with that?
Listen, I say it all the time. I'm like, we're Black 365 days a year.
Yeah.
So it's not just for, and I mean, in February too, we get gypped sometimes, depending if it's on a leap year or not. So I'm like, we need to celebrate this all the time. Like I do things for Black lives and like for my community. When it's February, when it's not, I talk about mental health and being Black. I talk about domestic violence because in the Black community, it's such a taboo to talk about. Imagine it's a taboo if you're not Black, when people are like, I can't talk about that. But in the Black community, mental health, domestic violence, and sometimes even being Black is a taboo. Like I find it ironic that there's so many non-Black people that they want to learn how to cook our food. They want to have our hairstyles and it's okay. And they want to be a part of the culture and they want to make our music, but they don't support us 365 days a year. They support us when I see
Hollywood
the post.
tells you to.
Oh my God, I see it all the time. IG comes up and it's Black History Month, and I always tell my husband, like, look at this, watch. You're going to see all the feeds now. You're going to see all the BS now. I see it February 1st, it starts. Some people start like the day before. I'm like, watch this. They're going to prep their social calendar the day before, and they're going to say pre-Black History Month. Power to the people. I'm for the Black community.
It's Black History Month Eve.
Yeah. And I'm like, what the hell is that? What are you doing? But it's so obvious. It's just like if you're an ally for the LGBTQ plus community, don't do it when it's Pride. Do it all the time. Speak out. So even for Black history, I look at it and I try to talk to people and educate them. Let's talk about it all the time. Like perfect example. I always use this. Kim Kardashian can go on the red carpet in cornrows. Now, when Tyra Banks did it back in the day, everybody was coming for her. Where's your wig? Where's your weave? Oh, it's not professional. So I say to my non-Black people, if you can wear a hairstyle that we cannot in a corporate head office or on the red carpet, and you see we're being chastised for wearing our real hair, speak on it. Speak on it. Stand up for us and say, you know what, if I can do it, then she can do it or he can do it. Because I know I've been chastised. I now decided after being bald for 5 years, to wear my natural curly hair. I used to kill myself trying to straighten it and blow dry to fit it.
Love your hair, by the way. I'm a hair guy. I love your hair.
So I'm like, I'm going to wear my fro and I'm going to rock it and be proud.
Amazing.
And I've been doing that. And that's the problem that I have. Being Black is all the time. I get it. We have issues with police. I've had it. And I tell people, don't think because I'm light skinned, I don't have trouble. It doesn't matter. When you're Black enough, you still get trouble.
Absolutely. I've had a friend of mine in America tell me that, where we've had conversations about systemic racism and you name it. And he said, Frank, you don't understand. I mean, I think you understand, but you'll never understand because you've never walked a mile in my shoes. And I said, I haven't walked a foot in your shoes. Yeah. He said, it's completely different. And I know because I've lived in the U.S. for parts of my life, not as long as you. Mm-hmm. And it's different for a white person getting pulled over. It really is. How people don't see this, I don't understand. But he said, Frank, you getting pulled over by a police officer and me, okay? He goes, I'm African. I'm from, I think he's from Nigeria. And he's like, when I get pulled over, they're always watching me. They always think, so it's completely different. So it exists. And I go, absolutely. And I'll never understand that. But just because this is my frustration, just because I'll never understand it, doesn't mean that I can't be compassionate
100%.
Towards it. And yeah, I'm with you 100%. But I don't feel that I need to justify that in this world that we live in today. We were talking about it when you walked in today. You have to justify. Okay, well, prove to me you're not anti-LGBTQ+. Prove to me you're not a racist. Kneel. That's my problem with the direction the world is going in. I'm not against kneeling. I'm against the meaning behind it. If you find true meaning in doing it, power to you. I'm for that pro-choice. Yeah. And whatever your stance is of being an individual and exercising your right to free speech and doing what you want. Yeah. But if somebody doesn't feel comfortable, like for me, I would never be comfortable to boo the Canadian national anthem.
No.
I saw a lot of flags in Ottawa that were upside down. Now, I understand the meaning, Canada in disarray, flag upside down, but I turned to my wife and my mother-in-law, I go, I don't like that. I didn't like to see an upside down flag. I saw the upside down flag at the Terry Fox statue. That bothered me because I don't like that. It's the same way when I see people kneeling. I don't like that. There's a lot of bad things that are part of our history. It doesn't mean we move on and forget. We need to remember. But I think one of the worst things we could do is just cancel people and throw everybody under the bus for all the, like the United States especially was built on, and I always talk about this, revolution, Civil War, how blacks have been, from slavery to, Martin Luther King fighting for civil rights. What the United States was built on, and still today, the racism exists just like 300 years ago.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Like my father was a part of it. He was born in 1933.
Right.
18 years older than my mom. And I went back to ask my grandmother and my great-grandmother when I was younger, because they were a part of the whole revolution of the whites in colored bathrooms. My father marched with Martin Luther King.
Jim Crow era.
Yeah, so we talk about it a lot. We grew up talking about it, and I educated myself so much so. My father, he told me, he's like, when I marched with Martin Luther King, my father was also in the military. Amazing. He was an American soldier, and he actually came in as a photographer, but he trained as a soldier. But my father had accolades of having a Purple Heart. He was a prisoner of war for the Korean War. And he went through a lot. He wound up being held POW, which is prisoner of war for those who are not aware.
My grandfather was a prisoner of war in Ethiopia.
You see, my father was in Korea, and he had a huge scar on his body due to shrapnel. Mm-hmm. He took shrapnel hit to save another soldier. Mm-hmm. I look at the things that my father did for the Black community. He was a very well-known photographer, and he actually revolutionized the modeling industry by the books that he wrote. So I looked at, he went from being a photographer soldier, risking his life when he was so young. He got into the military and the army when he was 15 years old. So I look at all of this, like my father was a part of that fight. My great-grandfather, his father was a part of that fight when there was only like the segregation, the real times of hardcore segregation. And that's the reason why I have a difficult time with the segregation with the Vax Pass, and because it's segregation.
Whichever way you look at it.
It's division and segregation. That's why I did that post where I had that little black man there drinking water and it said colored and no vax. It's like, but that's what we're coming to. And
you must have got a lot of flack for that, because that's what I'm saying. That's when this certain group of people will attack, because you can't make that comparison.
But they didn't attack me. You know what they said is like, and I guess if I was 100% white, they probably would have, which isn't fair, because we need allies. We want allies, but then we're saying, but you can't say that. Why not?
Yeah.
You're giving an example, because there was a time of segregation. Yes, it's different because of the oppression, and it was hundreds and hundreds, and we're still going through it. But it's just looking at, look at it for what it is. A comparison just in an image. Some similarity. Sometimes there's similarity that what we're going through now that we went through back in history. We're not saying it's the same exact oppression. It's a different form of an oppression.
But still oppression.
It's still oppression. It may not look the same, but the context is the same. Okay, so I don't understand. People are getting insensitive. They get so sensitive and hyped up, and cancel culture. I'm like, listen, first of all, I can't stand cancel culture because you're telling people that they're not allowed to have their own personal views and opinions. I don't cancel people. People come and talk to me about things. They don't agree with things that I've said for mental health. Some people, they're like, you're so open about it. We need to keep it closed. No, the reason why we keep it closed is because we're embarrassed. And the reason why we still have issues is because we're shutting down and keeping it closed. We need to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about everything that I believe in when it comes to pro-choice and human rights.
So I noticed this on your Instagram. I wasn't going to ask, but then, I was talking to my wife, who's kind of like an executive producer, but she's not, but she's going to love the fact I just said that. And I just throw things by her because she's a great sounding board. I said, you think I can mention this to Svetlana? She goes, well, just ask her. Racial profiling from RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. That was your husband? Can you tell us a bit
mother-in-law.
And your mother-in-law. Tell me a bit about that story, because I'm not very familiar, besides the fact that I read your post, and I know it happened, you posted it 2 weeks ago?
Well, it originally happened on December the 9th. And
originally, okay.
Yeah, and then we did the news on the 13th talking about it, because, it was ugly. It was messy.
What happened?
Well, it started with, we took my mother-in-law out of a very nasty situation where she was living, and we took, power of attorney over her and tried to get her life in order because she was about to lose her home. So my in-laws, and I always warn people, I can talk about it. My husband cannot, because he signed a document with them and I did not. So just for clarification. Yep. And because I'm not in agreement. When there's elder abuse of any form, I'm not for it. So there was neglect. So we pulled her out of the situation. She was about to lose her house because, when you don't pay your municipal taxes, they come for your house. And that's where she was at when we stepped in. Because during the pandemic, you can't visit your mother or your mother-in-law unless you're vaccinated and blah, blah. I'm like, okay, here we go. So we did all the right things, got there, and we saw how she was living, pulled her out. Got her with us. We paid all of the outstanding bills and debts that she was owing in order to at least save her home. That was my husband and his siblings' childhood home. Sold the home to somebody, friend of a friend, said, listen, I'm going to buy the home. We can do a private sale. So now my husband is her power of attorney. I'm second up on the power of attorney. And I'm giving you the narrative because it's very important of what happened. Then money was wire transferred. And this is very important in this story because of the racial profiling that happened. Money was wire transferred to a joint account that my husband's the primary on because my mother-in-law wanted to make sure he takes care of her lifestyle. Okay. Now my husband goes to the bank. He's paying bills and he texts me. He's like, babe, he's like, I feel like something's not right here. And me, I'm like, what's going on? What happened? He's like, the branch manager's behaving like I'm a criminal. And I said, what do you mean? I said, you know what? Put your earpiece, call me, put me on speakerphone. So I wanted to hear. And there was that brick wall that I heard. It was like, instead of asking where this money came from, but you can see it because it came from a notary, it was more, well, we have to look into this and I have to bring it to the higher ups. And he's asking for what? He's like, can we take this into your office to have a conversation? Well, is your mother aware? He's like, well, I'm paying her bills. She's aware. And he just felt so uncomfortable. I said, you know what, babe? just leave, go get your mom and bring her with you. That's what he did. He went to her residence. The manager was so shocked that he walked back in with his mom because she was trying to insinuate that, oh, maybe she didn't know what was going on. And I'm like, just go get your mom because I know your mom. She ain't going to tolerate this. Came back.
And your mom was...
My mother-in-law's there. She's coherent. She's everything.
Exactly.
She makes
Made it very clear.
Yeah, she's a very coherent 84-year-old woman who makes a lot of, inappropriate jokes sometimes, little dirty jokes.
She should come on the drive-by.
She's amazing, and, she's a Caribbean woman who's very outspoken.
Nice.
And she was fed up. She turned around and she looked at the branch manager and said, I want you to close all of my accounts and move the money into my branch in TD. And the manager shut down and started questioning whether she was of sound mind. And my husband,
because of the power of attorney,
because of the fact she requested to have her money moved herself out of her mouth.
Yeah, but did this all start because of the power of attorney that they thought maybe you were trying to control,
they
and
thought,
then therefore then it became a whole racial profiling.
Well, it did because I came in the next day.
Okay.
I came in trying to let me see if I can speak to her because I heard it on the phone, and we know any person who's been racially profiled, there's this brick wall that comes up and it hits you. And I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. It's this discrimination that's so ugly because it's like they're looking at they think you're this kind of person, this stereotype. So I'm talking to her. Well, I came in actually with my live on I'm like, so you're racially profiling my husband, my mother-in-law. She never denied it. She didn't say, no, I didn't. I was asking because of bank policy. She just looked at me and rolled her eyes and said, you can't record in this banking institution and you have to turn this off if you want to talk to me. I said, fine, put the phone down. I spoke to her. And I said, what's going on here? I said, why are you racially profiling my husband and his mother-in-law? You think that we can't have this kind of money? They're not capable? And I explained it to her where the money came from and everything. Oh, no, you don't have to tell me anything. I'm like, no, actually, I do have to tell you where this money came from because it's a large sum of money. And I know your banking policies because I have friends that work in banks. I don't know what you think this is. I said, can we go step into your office to have a conversation? No, we're going to do it here. So imagine we're at the teller where people are coming in.
And everyone's listening.
Everybody's listening. Privacy policy, my butt, because you're letting everybody listen to everything. And I said, wow. I said, you really have a problem. I said, I don't know what black person did you wrong that you think that this is a different situation. My mother-in-law was here the other day. My husband is a very honest person. I said, and I'm pretty known on social media. I think I'm a pretty decent person. So to have to deal with this? And she just looked at me and I'm like, wow, for a branch manager? I said, wow, it's pretty evident. So can you give me the information of the person I need to speak with to clarify everything that's happening in this situation? Oh, it's with the higher ups and I have no more control over anything. And if you don't like it, it's too bad. And if you want, you can sue the bank. That's not my problem. I'm like, so you racially discriminate us and you put up this brick wall and you're behaving in this condescending manner and you're not allowing us even the opportunity to sit down in your office to have a conversation. It is what it is. And I said, well, I'm going to call my lawyer right now and I'd like to know which department it's in. And this is what she said, that right there, I was like, my nerves just shrieked. You people always want to and I was like, she said, you people, babe.
Yeah, those two words are never good. Whether they come out of Don Cherry's mouth, Justin Trudeau, or a branch manager at a bank.
She said it 3 times.
Yeah, I don't, you know what? Never at your level have I experienced that, but I've heard you people referring to Italians. Yeah. Vous autres, maybe in French, right? It's hurtful. Yeah. I can't imagine what experiencing what you've experienced in your life and having to go through that, the pain. It's very painful.
It's painful, it's frustrating because it's like, besides the you people, I was like, yeah.
It's shocking to me that they would... First of all, anybody uses that, but it shocks me that they would use that term.
It just kept coming out. And I'm like, wow. So we're almost 2 months into this. Our lawyers are taking care of a lot of the things. And
you're seeking, obviously you can't talk about it. So.
No, we have legal.
Okay.
We have the De Bellefeuille family that is representing us, and they're amazing attorneys that are there. Martin de Bellefeuille is my husband's attorney, and he's amazing. And and you know what's ironic in all of this? His brother is black. So he's white, but his brother's black. Exactly. So I'm like, you know what? It's gotten messy. It's almost 2 months. By the 9th, what day are we? I'm like, my goodness, what day are we? Yeah, it's literally 2 months. Is it?
February 7th.
Almost. Yep. You see?
Yeah.
Almost 2 months, we're still at it. You know, they're negotiating, doing things, but I said, no, I'm not going to let this go and stop here. So people will be seeing more.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? People need to answer to misbehavior. It's that's racist.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable in society. It's the same way a week and a half ago when PK Subban's, you saw that, PK Subban's brother, somebody used a racial slur against him on the ice, an American Hockey League game. I think it was Jordan Subban.
Yeah.
To me, when I see those, like, it's just, I can't imagine the pain, because when you hear that or see that happening, that's already painful as a human.
Yeah.
I hear that and it breaks my heart. I can't imagine somebody who has to go through that. And then you see, PK Subban's press conference, and he comes out and you can feel, I watched that whole press conference, 14 minutes, whatever it was, the pain, the tears coming out.
I was crying. I could barely watch it because it's the reality of my children. It's the reality that, listen, my older son, he was 6 years old, and he was called an N-word by 2 students in his school. And I lived on Nuns Island at the time. And I was like, really? This is happening right here in this nice neighborhood? We dealt with it with teachers. I've dealt with my children dealing with being called the N-word. I mean, I was called it my whole life. I've grown up dealing with it. And I'm like, it's there. So watching that press conference, I was crying because I was like, wow, this pain. This is our real pain. This is what we face all the time. When is it going to stop?
To me, it's never okay to use the word. And I'm sure you've heard of, the collage of times that Joe Rogan has used the N-word. And now you have, Dave Chappelle has come out in defense of Joe Rogan. David Goggins, a lot of his, African-American friends have come out saying, listen, he's not like, this is not who he is. Many comedians have used the N-word in the past. We could go through the list of, I'm talking white comedians. Yeah. White personalities have used the N-word. Joe Rogan is somebody I respect. I can't lie. When I saw, I know it was 10, 12 years ago, and he was used, it was out of context, of course, because now now they just want to butcher him, right? And so now, for other reasons, they're going to go after him for anything. But when I saw that, and I thought his apology, did you see his apology? It was,
I couldn't stomach it. It bothered me.
Wasn't genuine to you?
I don't know, because I don't know him.
Right.
I've always liked his podcast. I've watched his stuff. I think he's a sharpshooter. He talks about real difficult issues. I don't know, because I don't know him personally. I just don't like it when we have a responsibility. If you did this 10 years ago, everybody has a past. Everybody has skeletons. But maybe it should have been something he should have brought up. Like, that's my personal opinion.
Beforehand. Listen, I have these shows that are out there where I've used the N-word. I didn't mean it like that. Wasn't in a, to me, it wasn't, how could you, and not be in a derogatory sense, it's the N-word.
I know.
But I said it in a different way. Now they put together, like before the actual montage comes out after the fact, you're saying he should have said something.
Well, I think he should have just talked about his past in general and things that could hurt him. Like, I've actually done lives and things in my past that people are like, oh, you brought that up? I'm like, what I'm doing is I'm bringing up things now so nobody has any receipts on me for anything. They can't come for me and say, everybody has a past. I just think that when he got into that forum of, I'm going to do this podcast and I'm getting really known, have a difficult conversation. Bring up the mistakes you've made in your past. Maybe even, do it pre-Black History Month. I think he should have brought it up a long time ago before he blew up and became super, super known. I think he should have had that responsibility to address it. And I don't think it would be affecting him as bad right now.
There's no way that, truthfully, I looked at that apology and it felt like it was coming from the heart because I've been watching him and listening to him for many years. But I'm not going to lie, when I saw that montage, I facepalmed and said, oh no. Yeah. Because all I'm thinking is he's going to get destroyed. And I don't believe he's a racist. But it's never a good time to use that. That's one of those words, and I believe in free speech and everything, but I find it a very degrading word. Now, when we were younger, I'm not going to lie, when we were younger, much younger, like I was 5, 6, 7 years old, there were rhymes, if you remember, nursery rhymes, where that word was in it.
Yep.
As a kid, you never knew what that word meant, but as soon as somebody brought it to your attention, which, during when you're growing up in the 70s and 80s, they were different times.
Yeah.
But when it finally came out. No, you don't say that word, then you just stop saying it.
Yeah.
And you don't say it. That's not to say that I was saying it, but I'm saying it was part of nursery rhymes, some that you might be familiar with. But it's just, anyway, let's move. But I'm glad,
that's that tension.
But I'm glad it came up because it's something everybody's talking about right now. So we've talked about a lot of, it's just been a very powerful conversation. Love having you here. You're going to be back again, by the way.
I love this conversation.
I love it. It's been amazing. But I wanted to mention, before we go, that you're going to be a part of New York Fashion Week 2022. Right. Tell me a bit about that and what your role in with the fashion show is going to be.
I'm so excited because, I have a brand called Woosah, which you remember in Martin Lawrence in the movie, it was like Woosah, to relax.
Yes.
Came from that word, but I actually went to find the real word, how it's spelled, WU-SAAH, which is a state of clarity and calmness. So I was, mulling it over. Do I want to do this brand? Because I really wanted to do an eco-sustainable brand. And I was able to pull it off, create an eco-sustainable brand. And I wasn't like, should I do this? I need a universal message because I'm always manifesting things. And I'm like, let me see if I need a sign. And I'm always asking God, universe, everybody for a sign. And then last year I got an email. It says, beautiful email. And all I saw is you've been invited to showcase for New York Fashion Week. I'm like, told my husband, I'm like, no, somebody's playing a prank on me because this is, come on, I'm a new designer. Like people don't know, I've designed things as a child. I've sketched a lot. I've made things. I used to take people's clothing and mix, match and create my own things. And then I was like, this is not for real. Because I just wanted a sign, should I launch my brand this year? And then I wrote back to the organizer and so I'm getting to showcase on February 14th. At New York Fashion Week.
You're going to be there?
I'm there, amazing. I'm leaving on Saturday.
Incredible.
I'm leaving on the 12th. And
this is the mecca for, people fashion. That, I know a lot of people know what New York Fashion Week, but some don't. This is the mecca of fashion in the world. So.
It is. Like I've walked Fashion Week as a model, but to showcase as a designer.
Incredible.
And because it's Black History Month too, and I feel like I have a responsibility that I have 16 Black models and 2 white models. I wanted to really have different shades of Black on my runway, which is something that designer Virgil Abloh did from Off-White, who just recently passed away due to his battle with cancer. He was, the creative director for Louis Vuitton. He was amazing, and his visions and mine are very similar. He was one of the only other designers to have a lot of Black models on his runway. And I feel like that's what's needed because we don't see that in fashion. In high fashion, we see a sprinkle of a couple of colored girls and boys there. So I really wanted to do something different. And my whole showcase is about mental health and biophilia, because I always tell people, I'm a biophiliac. They're like, what's that?
Yeah, what is that? Biophiliac.
Yeah, so biophilia is how nature can heal mental health. Okay. Because I have a lot of plants in my house. Not overkill, but I have quite a few that make you feel like you're in a tropical oasis. Because plants actually can put you in a calm state of mind, can reduce your blood pressure. There's Japanese studies on it. And I've always been so intrigued of biophilia. So eco-sustainability, green being the color of mental health, and biophilia kind of go together in this mishmash. So, even being a part of this, I'm so honored. So I'm super excited. I'm actually going to send you the link to the invite so you and your wife can watch virtually.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to send you that so you can check it out.
So my wife, speaking of her, wasn't wrong when she said, you need some plants in the drive-by studio. And I said, but there's black studio curtains behind us and it's already dark and there's lights. Where's it going to get?
Snake plants.
Snake plants?
Snake plants don't need much light. They're like the easiest plant. I tell people, if you're neglectful of plants.
Can you send me a couple of
I'm gonna
pictures?
Send you
that's how I work.
I'm going to send you pictures.
I'm visual. I'm like snake plants. That's amazing. So she's not wrong.
No, not at all. It helps the mental health. And read about biophilia. It's super interesting, but I'm showcasing that because my brand is fully eco-sustainable. All my fabrics are made from recycled plastic bottles.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Notice I don't have any recycled plastic here. I only have water systems in my house. We don't believe in plastic. There's plastic everywhere in the world, but we try to do our best with not having plastic bottles in the house. So, all right. I don't know why I had to mention that.
cancel culture, you know.
Oh, I've been
the
canceled
greens,
so many
the
times.
green people.
If we're talking like a scoreboard for being canceled, I don't know what the score is between you and I, but I
It's
think
getting close.
It's
there.
getting pretty close, I'm thinking. But Svetlana, thank you so much for being on the drive-by. It's been a pleasure having you here. I look forward to we have a little bit of food ready. I look forward to grabbing a little bit of a bite and talking to you some more off the air, and I really appreciate you taking the time being on here. You're so well spoken.
Thank you.
So compassionate to everybody's causes, and you do so much, and people need to follow you and find out more about you if they don't already. I think we've put up your handle already on our screen, but just in case, how can people find out more about you?
It's super easy. I'm not going to make you spell Svetlana Chernienko.
Notice I only said the last name once. I got it right. She said, yes.
Yes.
I go, now it's like, Svetlana, thank you for coming on, and appreciate it.
No, at The Real Svetlana. Even my website, everything is at therealsvetlana.com, at The Real Svetlana. Every single social, I made it easy for people that they could not butcher my last name as finding me that way.
And at the Drive-By Bar, which is feet from us here in the basement of my home, Svetlana had a choice of ordering any drink, and she said, I'm a Scotch, I'm a whiskey girl. So I was like, we're starting this on a great note. Thank you so much. And I look forward to having you on again sometime in the future. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. You're fantastic.
We're family now.
Thank you.
This is The Drive-By with Freeway Frank.